Today on an all-new Dr. Phil, a violent past.
Charlie was 13 when he killed his mother.
Hidden from his wife.
Shouldn't you have said, there's something you need to know about him?
You didn't tell. How did you decide that?
With horrific consequences.
This gets worse.
He killed his wife and niece.
He said the best way to get revenge is to cut out their heart.
We're talking about a serial killer here. What if someone had a dark and violent secret from their childhood, but years later had seemingly moved on? Would you tell your friend who they are now dating, or would you allow that person to leave the past in the past? You know, think about that. That's exactly the dilemma we're talking about today. And as I said, it requires your participation and requires your moral compass. And I guarantee that by the end of this hour, you'll be asking yourself, what would I do? I want to tell you a story about a 13-year-old boy named Charlie being raised by his mother and father and living with his sister. From the outside, they look like the perfect family. Then one quiet winter afternoon in January, this seemingly normal 13-year-old little boy made a tragic choice. Take a look.
Charlie Brandt was 13 years old when he killed his mother and tried to kill his dad.
Charlie walked into a bathroom while father was shaving, shot him in the back. He went down.
So he tried to kill his sister in her bedroom with a gun that had run out of bullets.
The gun wouldn't fire. The next thing she knew, they were physically fighting.
So he choked her. She was able to get away from him and run out the front door to the neighbors and call 911 to get help. After the murders, he was put in the county jail, and in January of 1971, he was examined by a psychiatrist, and it's documented in his record that he did not have a diagnosable mental illness. The grand jury, they did not indict him. They did not convict him of any crime. They said he needed to be closely monitored, and he was committed to the mental hospital in Indiana and was in the hospital from May of 1971 until July of 1972. Charlie was released in July of 1972. His father had sold their home, quit his job there in Indiana, and moved the family to Daytona. Charlie finished high school in Daytona. Angela and her father were the only two that knew that Charlie had that kind of a past.
Little Charlie's 8 months pregnant mother died that day, but by some miracle, the father and sister lived. His father moved him and his sister to another state where no one knew about Charlie's murderous past. Now, Charlie's life appeared to be back on track because he assumed a normal life. He was handsome, he was well-educated, working as a technical engineer at an aerospace company, so contributing member of society. Now, in years to come, Charlie's sister Angela, the one he tried to choke all those years earlier, married a man named Jim. Now, Charlie and Jim became close friends at some point, and Angela revealed her family history to Jim. She told him how Charlie had murdered their mother and her unborn baby, shot their father multiple times, although he survived, and had attempted to murder her. Now, Jim, as I said, as most of you said, he sees no sign of Charlie having any current problem and decides to look beyond Charlie's past and introduces Charlie to his friend Teri. They hit it off. So now Charlie and Teri are dating. Now, this is where you, the audience here and at home, come in. Did Jim owe it to his friend to tell her what he knew about Charlie's violent criminal past, even though it was childhood, many years earlier? Or was it reasonable for him to think that people deserve a second chance, especially for crimes they committed as a child? Okay? So let me ask you again. If you think Jim should have told Teri about Charlie's past, raise your hand. Okay, if you think no, doesn't owe it to her, raise your hand. We also did a web poll, and here's what it said. 28% would tell a friend. 72% say they would not tell. Okay. For those of you who said, no, Jim shouldn't have told, you're obviously not alone. Most people agree with you. Jim agreed and chose not to reveal Charlie's dark secret to Teri. Well, Teri's sister, Mary Lou, and her husband, Bill, strongly disagree, perhaps with good reason.
Our daughter, Michelle, was murdered on September the 13th of 2004 by Charlie Brandt. Charlie Brandt was Michelle's uncle.
He was married to my baby sister, Teri. Michelle had invited Teri and Charlie to come stay with her.
We talked to Michelle almost on a daily basis.
It was 4 days I had not talked with her. So I called Debbie, her best friend. I asked her if she had seen Michelle, and she said no, but she would go over to the house and check. She had a key to Michelle's home, but it didn't work. Debbie walked around the back of the house and looked in the glass window of the garage, and that's when she screamed. The police were so overwhelmed by the crime scene.
They came out and threw up in the front yard. Charlie killed Michelle and Teri.
Teri was in the living room on the couch, and she'd been stabbed several times. The stab wounds were so harsh that they penetrated the sofa. Michelle was in her bedroom. The way Charlie killed her, he cut her head off and put it next to her body so she could look at him.
They actually thought that it looked like he had literally taken a hairbrush and brushed her hair back so that it was smoothed back. He had removed one arm, he removed both breasts, and was in the process of taking off one of the legs. Apparently he didn't have a saw and maybe he couldn't get it off, I don't know.
He violated her sexually, and he took her heart out, and then he went and took a shower and dressed in clean clothes and went into the garage and put a stool between the cars. He tied a knot, and he knew exactly where to put it, and stepped off the stool and killed himself.
Well, Sean, Michelle's brother, is also joining us. So, Mary Lou, Bill, Sean, I'm glad to meet y'all. I hate the circumstance. I wish we were talking about something else, anything else, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
I've read some of the police reports, and I mean, these are seasoned law enforcement officers that were traumatized and sick in the front yard. They said they'd never seen anything like this at all.
No, they said in their 21, the chief investigator said in his 26 years at the time of his work, he had never seen anything like it. He said, you have 3 distinct crime scenes here. And they didn't know who Michelle was. We got a call from the sheriff, and he asked for dental records.
You knew Charlie, right? And what was he like, Sean?
Nice, quiet, unassuming. Yeah, I mean, he was just like your, everyday
Kept to
guy.
himself?
Yeah.
Do y'all believe that Teri had any idea of his past?
Absolutely.
Absolutely not.
No.
You don't think there's any way that he had told her about this, confided in her?
Teri was a person who couldn't keep a secret, and especially from her sisters. There were 5 girls in her
She would have
family.
told you.
We'd have known. Yes, we would have.
If you could tell Teri something, say, look, you can't share this with anybody, just me and you, okay? It would get spread. I mean, that's the way it is. She's a jovial, fun person to be around, and if you tell her something like that, it would spread like wildfire, and she wouldn't have stayed with him. No question.
We did a poll. 78% of the people said, if somebody had something dark past, I'd let them leave it in the past. I wouldn't tell. You all clearly disagree with that for
Absolutely.
obvious reasons. Let's take a break. Next, there was one other person besides Charlie's sister, Angela, and their father who knew the family secret. Well, we're going to meet that person. That's Jim. This is the person that introduced Charlie to Teri. And he never revealed the secret of what Charlie told him about cutting out a woman's heart. We'll talk about that when we come back.
met Charlie Brandt's sister Angela when I was 16, before we got married. Angela told me, well, my brother killed my mother. She had said it more than once that she was still frightened of him. I told Charlie that you have to tell Teri about your past.
Tomorrow on Dr. Phil.
You call him fat bleep, bleeping obese, bleeping lazy.
Torn apart by weight.
She doesn't eat. I eat.
You have an eating disorder. And your mom couldn't get out of bed for 3 years.
I'm scared, Dr. Phil.
Plus, big girl busted.
I like to see what people do when they don't know we're watching.
What?
Here's what she had at the hotel.
Seriously?
You eat fried bologna.
But I'm fried in canola oil.
Well, hell, forget what I said then.
That's tomorrow.
One of the things we're talking about today is the dilemma that everyone in their lives has faced. What do you do with what you know? Is there a threshold where you feel like you have to tell? Well, my next guest didn't. That's Jim. Jim knew Charlie because he married Charlie's sister. But little did he know that when he married into the family, he would become entwined in a real-life Stephen King novel. His own brother-in-law was a murderer, and he held the family secret, a secret that if he had just told may have saved lives. Take a look.
I met Charlie Brandt's sister Angela when I was 16. We got married about 18 months later. Angela told me about Charlie's past before we got married. She goes, I have something I have to tell you. Well, my brother killed my mother. I wasn't quite prepared for that at all. I didn't believe it. One day we went over to Angela's father's house and he was mowing the yard without his shirt on and he had these scars. There was no mistaking it was a bullet hole. And now I am aghast. She was telling me the truth. Now all kinds of things are racing through my mind. And she had said it more than once that she was still frightened of him at times. After Angie's and I split, Charlie and I actually became closer. Somehow we got on the topic of revenge. He looks at me and goes, well, you know what the perfect revenge is, Jim. I said, well, what is it? You kill somebody, and then you cut their heart out and you eat it. I didn't know what to say. I was dating a girl named Nancy, and Charlie had inquired if she had any friends that she thought would be interested in palling around with all of us. Teri was Nancy's friend. Charlie and Teri hit it off and started dating. After 6 months, Charlie expressed to me he was going to ask Teri to marry him. I told him that you have to tell her about your past. Charlie told me that he told her about his past. I came down to the Keys, and I hadn't seen them in quite some time. Teri told me that she was considering calling the sheriff because she had walked in the utility room, and Charlie was covered with blood. That was the last time I ever saw Teri and Charlie. A friend called and told me Charlie had killed his wife and niece, and Charlie committed suicide. Charlie fooled everyone. I feel terrible. I missed it. I will never completely heal from this. I gotta compose myself. I don't want to cry on camera.
Well, Bill and Mary Lou have never spoken to Jim and asked him why he didn't tell. And of course, this is their opportunity. Jim, I'm glad you're here. Thank you for coming. And
Okay.
You made a decision to say something to Charlie rather than to Teri. Take me through that decision. 78% of the people in our poll agreed with you, but take me through your decision. How did you decide that?
At first, I'd like to say I'm very sorry for all this occurring. At the time, I felt it was his place to tell her, not for me to go and tell his fiancée, you know, there's something about Charlie that you need to know. And I talked to him on the phone and I said, look, you've got to tell Teri. And he's, no. And I said, if you don't tell her, I'm going to tell her. And he said, okay, then I guess I will.
So you did think it was important for her to know.
Absolutely.
But you left it to him.
Correct.
Tell me what's going through your all's mind.
You thought he told, but you had the opportunity. And do you know how many people's lives have forever been changed? It's so hard for me to understand. And I know there's 78% that said they wouldn't tell, but I'm telling you, in our world today, it is just unacceptable.
I truly believed that he handled that business that I had discussed with him. Also, I had conversations with Teri that confirmed my personal feelings that he had indeed informed her. And when I introduced Teri and Charlie, how on earth would I know that they'd ever get married? It was just a gathering, an innocent gathering of friends.
You were the best man at his wedding.
Yes.
And at some point, there was another opportunity in a bar in Miami. And Teri told you about this experience with the blood.
That's
and you
right.
could have had an opportunity to tell
That's
her
how
then.
I knew she knew. Because she referred to it in our conversation.
She referred to what?
The mother incident. She's
Well, that's
saying,
the
I
first
want
time
to
I've
call
heard you say that.
I want to call the sheriff because I know what happened with him and his mother.
Well,
That's
that
what
was-
I'm
Well, my
trying to tell
understanding
you.
from what you said initially was that you understood that when Teri saw Charlie, he turned, where you been? Because dinner's ready, and he turns around, he's got blood all over him, and he says, what does it look like I've been doing? I've been cleaning fish. But he had no fish. There was no fish in the sink or on the sink.
Let me fill in some blanks for people here to be sure we haven't glossed over something. There was a point in time when you and Charlie were talking about revenge or getting even with someone,
Much
right?
earlier.
Right, much earlier. And he said what to you?
He said the best way to get revenge is to kill somebody, cut out their heart, and eat it.
Okay, now, this was during the period of normalcy.
It was the
Right.
first weird thing I had ever heard out of
Gotcha.
him.
And then
after 6
the second
years.
thing we're talking about is she walked in on him one day covered in blood, right, in the laundry room, as I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And this was simultaneous with,
There was a murder that occurred in that area the same day that he showed up with his blood all over him. So was he involved in it? My God, I don't know.
she said that to who?
This guy, Jim.
She said that to you.
Yes, that's correct.
Now, I want to get all the cards on the table here because the truth is, this gets worse. We'll take a look.
After the murders, there were a number of inquiries from law enforcement agencies around the country.
At one point, they were investigating 26 different cases. Charlie was formally charged with 2 of those. One of them was Sherry Paricio, and the other one was Darlene Toller.
It turned out that Charlie Brandt was a serial killer. Would Teri have married Charlie had she known that he had killed his mother? No, ma'am. She would not have married Charlie, period.
And our Teri and Michelle would still be alive with us today.
We now know he killed his mother, her unborn baby, attempted to kill his father and sister, killed Teri, killed Michelle, 2 other murders that we now know about, others that are being investigated. We're talking about a serial killer here, a predator among us.
Yes.
You think Teri knew. You all say, no way she knew.
Shouldn't you have said, there's something you need to know about him before you get too serious about him? Or?
We have to take a break. These horrific murders not only affected Michelle and Teri's immediate family. Michelle's best friend, Debbie, which we just talked earlier about, actually found Charlie hanging from the rafters of the garage. When we come back, we're going to hear how she stared a serial killer in the eye and narrowly escaped death herself. We'll be right back.
One of Michelle's friends was visiting one night, and she saw something out of the corner of her eye and turned to see Charlie staring at her. It was frightening. One of Michelle's friends was visiting one night and got up in the middle of the night to get a glass of water, and she saw something out of the corner of her eye and turned to see Charlie staring at her. It was frightening. She went back to the bedroom and climbed in the bed and said to Michelle, "Man, this guy's strange." Michelle said, "Oh, he's a big teddy bear."
Well, Debbie and Peggy were two of Michelle's best friends. Now, Michelle is the daughter here, and it was Debbie who got the call from Mary Lou to please check on Michelle when no one had heard from either Michelle or Teri in 2 days, which is very unusual. Now, Debbie and Peggy are joining us live via satellite from the house that this tragically happened in. Debbie, let me start with you. Something happened the night before that makes you think that you may have foiled his plans. Tell me about that.
I spent the night here with Charlie and Michelle and Teri. And sorry, I'm very nervous. And we had, you know, a great dinner and some wine, sat in the jacuzzi. And then that night I realized it's probably not the best thing for me to go home. And I couldn't sleep because Michelle had 2 cats, and I'm very allergic to cats. And so I kept waking up in the middle of the night, probably, I would say, around 12:30 that night, and then approximately 1:30, and then 2:30. But every time I woke up in the middle of the night to get a glass of water, Charlie was in the kitchen.
He's up during the night. You keep getting up, and he's just up in there by himself.
Yes, sir. Just standing there, like stoic looking and
Fully dressed.
Yes, he was fully dressed. It was really awkward, but I didn't think at the moment, like, awkward, like, oh, he's going to kill somebody.
Yeah.
But I think, in hindsight, thinking back, that maybe that was his plan, and I prevented it. And maybe if I spent the night, the following night, that if I was there, it could have prevented that from happening again.
Well, or you could have been an additional victim as well, as you know. Peggy, let me ask you and Debbie both, did Teri know about this? Do you think she knew about this history with Charlie?
I have had doubts, and I don't blame Jim for what Charlie did. I don't know if him telling if he did or not, if that could have prevented it, because there's also Charlie's father who never said anything, and there's also Charlie's sister who never said anything. There was other people that could have said something that didn't. So Jim wasn't the only one that did not say anything. I think he did try to clue Teri in, whether or not she knew and Charlie told. We'll really never know, but from her journal entries, you know, where she wrote "weird night" and the questioning about the cleaning of the fish and the blood, and, you know, not following up with the police or looking into that further, like, where's the fish?
Tell me about these journal entries that were written.
I did see the journal entries, and the journal entries that I recall seeing described evenings where Charlie had an emotional day, or Charlie was very emotional.
There's nothing in there that tells you she knew? There
was nothing that was any clear indication that she knew. We won't ever know, but in my heart, I don't believe my sister would have stayed with someone who had committed a violent crime like that.
We have to take a break here. Up next, I'm going to tell you what I would have done and how I would have done it. This is a question we all face from time to time. This time, it had tragic, tragic consequences. We'll talk about all that when we come back. Ready to get real? Go to drphil.com for advice on relationships, parenting, finances, and more. Plus, weigh in on your favorite episode, share your stories, and find support in the Dr. Phil community. When you sign up for the community, you will automatically be subscribed to the Dr. Phil Show newsletter, so you won't miss what's coming up next. Log on to drphil.com today.
It would be our goal that a Michelle Lynn's Law be implemented in every state in this country. If you commit a violent crime, regardless of your age, your criminal profile is entered into a database that is retrievable by law enforcement. Once you're in the database, you are not an invisible criminal. And that was what Charlie was. He was an invisible killer.
Now, Bill and Mary Lou want to put something called Michelle Lynn's Law into place. And look, when a juvenile commits a violent crime, records cannot be expunged or sealed is basically what you're wanting to say. So in situations where you have a violent crime, a murder committed by someone that has their faculties intact, that should not be expunged because, as I'm saying, it is the best predictor of what they might do in the future.
If we had our dream come true about honoring our daughter and preventing other people from experiencing what we did, anyone, regardless of their age, who's committed a violent crime would be entered in a database that's retrievable by law enforcement. They could pull it up when they're investigating a crime, but it would also be a deterrent. If you knew that you were not discoverable, or if you knew that you were discoverable, then you would think twice about what behavior you manifest.
I said I would say what I would do with the benefit of 20/20 hindsight that I'm straight up you didn't have, but I can tell you that I personally in this situation would have said to Charlie, if it went beyond, hello, let's share a drink in a group, if he was going to be alone with that woman, I would have said, you need to tell her about this. And at some point very soon, I would have looked her in the eye and said, you've met Charlie and talked to him now. How do you feel about him? Exactly. Anything jump out to you? Exactly. And if she says, no, seems like a really nice guy to me, I know he didn't tell you, so I'm going to tell you. I just have to say, I would give him the chance to tell, and if he told me he did it, I would believe it, but I would make eye contact with my friend, who I think I owe a duty since I brought him into her world. I would want to make sure, if I've been the gatekeeper here and let him in this world, I just want to be sure. If you forgive and overlook, I'm proud of you, but I just want to be sure you made an informed decision. And so I would confirm that. It's easy for me to say now. It's different for you to say at the time.
Never in my wildest dreams.
Of course. And I think everybody understands that. There was a book written about this. I've read the book. It is called The Invisible Killer, the story of a serial killer, Charlie Brandt. It's available in bookstores now, and as Bill said earlier, it really is a story of how he kind of hid in plain sight. I mean, you hang with normal people, you get painted with a normal brush, and that's certainly what happened in this situation, in my view. I want to thank Debbie and Peggy for joining us today, and thank y'all, and we're going to put a piece on our website about what you want to do with the Michelle Lynn Law, and I would like to invite y'all to write a blog to go on our website about what you want and why you want it, and we'll put it up for everyone to read and comment on so we can get there. And again, I'm so very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Next, I know it's a difficult day today, but we're going to talk about the horrific story of a baby murdered by her mother and then hidden in a garage for 3 months. You've been reading about this story. Did baby Elaina's mother, Angela, throw her across the room and kill her? Or was it her boyfriend, Stephen King, who killed the 18-month-old? We're going to find out what baby Elaina's bio father and aunt believe really happened when we come back.
A gruesome discovery. Human remains again found in that garage.
My 18-month-old daughter, Elaina, was murdered by her mother, Angela, and her boyfriend, Stephen King.
When I heard about her body being found, my heart dropped to my knees.
I hate her. She took my daughter from me.
Baby Elaina was just 18 months old when she went missing. It took police over 3 months to find her, and the world looked on in horror when her tiny body was found hidden in a box inside the garage.
Where is baby Elaina?
A gruesome discovery. Human remains again found in that garage near the home where Elaina was last seen.
Angela Steinfurth, Elena's mother, and her ex-boyfriend, Stephen King, are behind bars.
My 18-month-old daughter, Elaina, was murdered by her mother, Angela, and her boyfriend, Stephen King. Angela lived at Stephen's house and cared for the girls from there. I dropped off my daughters, Kylie and Elaina, to Angela on May 30th. I returned to pick them up on June 2nd. Angela gave me Kylie and refused to give me Elaina because she said that she was taking a nap. I ran into Stephen's house to see if I could find her. I was screaming her name. She was just not there. It just felt like a bad dream.
Teri called me and told me that Elaina was missing. I was shocked. I went over to Stephen's house. I just ran up to my sister Angela and I was like, where's Elaina at? She did seem emotionless. I felt like she was hiding something from me.
Toledo police showed up and they started the missing persons case.
We were out till 5 in the morning searching dumpsters, alleys, abandoned garages. Angela got arrested 10 days after Elaina went missing. She admitted to Elaina having a black eye, a broken nose, and a lump on her head. I heard that Angela threw Elaina against the wall and she was unconscious, and that's when Stephen covered her nose and her mouth and she died.
Elaina was missing for about 3 months before Stephen finally confessed.
I tried to do CPR on her, but blood started coming out of her mouth and nose. I panicked, I covered her mouth and nose, I wrapped her body in a bag and hid the body in the garage.
The box does contain human remains. We are referring to baby Elaina Steinfurth.
Elena's remains were found at Stephen's parents' house in the garage.
When I heard about her body being found, my heart dropped to my knees. I would never think Angela would hurt Elaina. She loved the girl.
Angela eventually pled to murder B. Stephen pled to aggravated murder.
Angela was sentenced to 18 years to life, and Stephen was sentenced to 25 years to life.
When I think about Elaina, I just miss her smile, her playfulness.
I miss her a lot. I'm gonna cry. I miss her running around my house, grabbing my dog by its tail. I just miss her.
I don't feel that the sentencing was fair. I feel like Angela and Stephen should both get the death penalty. I hate her. She took my daughter from me.
Well, again, I'm sorry for your loss. It's just a terrible, terrible thing. At this point, both of them are in prison for a long period of time. But Angela never admitted what she still maintains, that she did not hurt the baby, correct?
Yes.
At what point did you decide that your sister was actually involved in the death of this child?
After their sentencing, when it came across the news of what actually happened to Elaina, for them to find the blood on the wall, the bed, and the floor, and then it coming out that she threw Elaina and hit the wall, the bed, and the floor, and the blood was all in those spots. So.
Because she confessed that the baby had a broken nose, a black eye, and a bump on her head.
Mm-hmm.
And did she explain how that supposedly happened?
No, she
if
said
she
she didn't know.
Do it?
At first, she said she didn't know.
She didn't know
how she got the broken nose and the black eye and the lump on her head.
Did she ever explain how that happened?
Nope.
Well, we're going to take a break. This, of course, has a terrible ripple effect. This child's life has been taken away, and now it creates tremendous tension within your family.
You're going to be in the Los Angeles area and you would like free tickets, go to drphil.com and click on Be in the Audience.
Or call 323-461-PHIL.
Kylie cries for Elaina all the time. I definitely dread the day that Kylie finds out exactly what happened. She knows that Elaina passed, but she doesn't know how or why.
I worry about Kylie a lot. I worry about what runs through her head, and it bothers me that she has to think about never seeing her sister again.
18-month-old baby Elaina made headlines when her little body was found hidden in a box inside a garage. It took police over 3 months to find her. Angela and her boyfriend, Stephen King, were convicted of the baby's murder and are now serving time in prison. One of the things you have to do, having another child, is find a way to keep putting one foot in front of the other and get through this and find your way. How's that going?
It has its days. Some are easier than others. I just got to keep pushing forward for Kylie.
Does she seem to be coping with that okay?
Some days she's an emotional wreck.
And what's happening between you and your father over this?
Like, he gets mad because I won't go visit her.
He wants you to go.
Yeah.
And he wants you to take your son.
Yep.
And your son is how old?
5.
And so he's wanting you to get birth certificate for your son, numbers and everything, so you can register at the prison to be on the list to have access to go and visit her. Do you want to do that?
No.
Are you going to do that?
No.
Why do you think he is so adamant about this? Because I understand he passionately believes she did nothing wrong here.
I don't know. He talks to her, so I don't know what she's telling him. He's saying that she didn't do any of that to Elaina, that the only thing that she's guilty of is not seeking medical attention when she's seen the bruises on her face.
Would it matter to you if she owned it, if she came clean and admitted what she did? Would that help you?
Probably not. Yeah. Because it would probably just make me mad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can understand. I can understand that. And look, I know this is a wedge between you and your father, and I hope that you will find it in your heart to forgive both of them. But forgiving them and fostering a relationship with them, driving up to see her, spend time with her, make nice with her, are two different things. Forgiving her means you let yourself go from this bond of hatred with her. It doesn't mean that you expose yourself to her. I wouldn't be pressured into it. I wouldn't be coerced into it. And I damn sure would not drag my 5-year-old son up there and have him sit before this woman that murdered your niece. That, to me, is a higher form of insanity to even consider. So I hope you stand your ground in that regard. All right, up next, she weighed a mere 76 pounds on her wedding day. Find out what bombshell the groom dropped after their big day when we come back. Know what's coming up on Dr. Phil? Visit our website and subscribe to our email newsletter. You'll get weekly updates, life strategies, and exclusive video that you won't find anywhere else.
Plus, on drphil.com, you can see sneak previews of upcoming shows. Log on today.
Well, we are 5 days away from my 2000th show celebration, so I'm counting down to the big day with updates on some of our all-time favorite guests. 7 years ago, April wrote to me, desperate for one last chance to save her newlywed marriage. She weighed a frail 76 pounds on her wedding day due to her battle with a very serious eating disorder. But her husband, John, refused to stick around.
About a month or two after John and I got married, there is a message on my cell phone. I don't want to be married anymore. What a coward.
Why did he want out? Is it because...
I don't know. If I knew why he wanted out, I wouldn't be sitting in this chair.
He knows you've got an eating disorder when you get engaged. He obviously knew it whenever you got married because we saw the wedding pictures.
We started dating, yes.
And you were emaciated at the time.
I do not miss being with April at all. It would be an evil trick if April was trying to get back with me.
You want a divorce?
Yes.
For sure?
Yes.
No doubt in your mind?
Not even a little bit.
You're still married, but you're sleeping with other women. I see no foundation upon which to sustain this relationship.
I just want to move on and find somebody else.
Got what I wanted. She signed the divorce papers.
You've lost weight since I saw you last.
My problem now is grieving that eating disorder. I grieve it. I miss it.
Isn't it true that you feel yourself being pulled back?
Yes.
You were on death's door, and you fought your way back.
It kills me to look at those pictures. I can't stand them.
What you need right now is to be the star in your life. And then when it's time to start dating someone, then we'll do that. But I'm going to tell you, he's going to have to get by me. Okay? Well, so April has made an amazing turnaround. April, how are you doing?
Great. I'm great. I became the star of my life.
How important is that?
I've just accomplished a lot. I started writing a book soon afterwards. And, you know, I know I was on death's door. And even on the show, even the follow-up show, I know that I was still very sick.
Yeah.
And, you know, God saved my life, and your show has been a resource for eating disorders, and I think that they're so critical and so important.
Well, you look so healthy now. You feel well.
I'm happy. Yeah, I'm happy and healthy, and I do. I feel wonderful.
Well, that's so great. Congratulations on all of your progress. Tune in for more amazing updates on some of your favorite guests this Tuesday when we celebrate our 2000th show. I want to thank all of my guests for being here today. For more information on Michelle Lynn's Law, go to drphil.com. We'll have information there. Be sure to pick up a copy of Invisible Killer, which is in bookstores now. Thanks so much for being here. So long. Thank you.